Welcome to Melrose Unitarian Universalist Church. Our service today is called the Hegemonic Blues. Good morning and happy Martin Luther King Day weekend. I'm the Reverend Dr. Suzanne Trilligator. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I am delighted to be the minister of this congregation. Thank you for joining us. All are welcome to worship with us this morning. To learn more about our church and our values, please visit our website at melroseuu.org. On our welcome page, you can find a link to our digital guest book. Ann Noonan, who is serving as our chat host this morning, will put that link into the chat box now. Feel free, as you like, also for you to use the chat box to say hello and greet everyone else here. And please feel welcome to stay afterward for our virtual coffee hour. Our church has a long and proud history of commemorating Dr. King with prayer, reflection, and service. And this year is no different despite the pandemic. We won't be hosting our usual in-person citywide day of service, but our own Liz Tashoni, who also serves on the Melrose Human Rights Commission, has created for us and for the whole town a 30 days of service calendar, which is packed with ways that you can contribute. You can download the calendar from our website, along with a flyer about the Human Rights Commission's other great activities that are planned for this weekend and the days to come. Look on our website, on our homepage, for an orange MLK graphic. Click on that, the More button underneath, and that's where you'll find the flyer and the calendar to download. On that flyer, you'll also find out more information about how to take part in a citywide art project led by our own Chris Rodolico and her daughter, Olivia Fracht. That should be really beautiful, so check that out. And also, tomorrow night, also on the flyer, the MHRC is sponsoring a special MLK Day speaker on Zoom. Farine Paris-Meyer is a professional storyteller who will invite you into a heart-centered conversation about race, diversity, and empathy. It should be really good. So please, if you've got a moment, and I know you're not working, maybe tomorrow, have a look at that. Coming up in a week or two, we're going to start a Zoom discussion group on the book that I preached about last week, Timothy Snyder's On Tyranny. Snyder is an expert on how democracies slip into authoritarianism, and this volume is a short and pithy handbook for concerned citizens. Liz Folzer put in a group book order this past week, and we bought a few extra to share around the church. So if you can, pick up your copy soon. Look for updates on that in your midweek email news. Today, our worship service will commemorate Dr. King and explore our UU faith's commitment to a multicultural faith, becoming a multicultural faith, and that in the past and in the present and in the future. We have a special guest preacher this morning joining us live from Minneapolis, the Reverend Karen Hutt. You may remember her from her June sermon called No Justice, No Peace, which we shared here in our Zoom service. And it was really thought-provoking. People got a lot out of it. So I was excited when I could welcome her back to our worship. And she's joining us live one-on-one. She will be here afterward to take your questions and have conversation. So she's all ours this morning. Reverend Hutt has been a UU minister for 25 years, serving both in churches and as a prison chaplain. She is currently a vice president at United Theological Seminary in the Twin Cities, where she lives with her partner, the Reverend Ashley Horan, who leads our national UU The Vote effort, and their 3 children. Looking forward to that sermon today. I'm sure it's going to be great. If you have feedback about today's service, there are many ways for you to engage with us. First, as I say, you can stay afterward in the main room. Don't go to a breakout room, but stay here. And Reverend Hutt and I will be chatting about the service. You can join us. Second, you can fill out our feedback form on our website. Ann Noonan is going to post the link to that now in the chat box. It also appears on the end slide, so you can catch it at the end too. Third, you can join us in our weekly worship chat on Wednesdays at noon on Zoom, and the link to that is also in the midweek update. And now for something completely different. I want to give you a heads up about next week's service. Barring any more national emergencies that might cause me to change my plans, next Sunday, I'm going to give the auction sermon with the topic that was won last year by the highest bidder. That person was Brian Johnson, and he requested a topic from the famed British comedy troupe, Monty Python. Since he's named Brian and the Pythons did a whole movie spoofing religious topics, I'm planning to preach on the film Life of Brian. It's available to watch on Netflix, Amazon Prime, and YouTube if you feel like preparing for worship by watching it, but that is in no way necessary. What does feel necessary, to me at least, is to let you know that next Sunday's service will include clips from the film. So, unlike other services, we will not be publishing the worship video to our YouTube channel afterward for copyright reasons. And because of the clips, the service will contain elements that some people in the past may have called obscene, blasphemous, or just downright silly. So I want you to feel both warned and invited. So that's all for our announcements this morning. Now we get to enjoy a testimonial courtesy of our stewardship team, who invite you every Sunday of the year to reflect on what church means to you. So here to share her reflection today is board member Mary Hildebrand. Mary, go ahead.
Morning, everybody. So I just wanted to start off by saying that church has been a thread throughout my life, especially Unitarian Universalism. I grew up in a United Methodist church, and when I was 20, I attended the All Souls UU Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and that was it for me. I found my spiritual, intellectual, and social justice home at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Tulsa. When my daughters were young, my husband and I raised them in the North Dallas UU Church in Texas. I taught RE, I was on various committees, and I loved working the Fall Harvest Fair. But I remember being in the emergency room at Texas Children's Hospital with my daughter Emily, who was really, really ill. And we were met in the emergency room by the RE director, Anne, and my minister, Eric. They visited us regularly throughout her 2-week stay. When my daughters were teenagers, we were very active in the Los Alamos, New Mexico church. They were active in the teen group. Some of their best friendships were made in the teen group. And I was taking care of, many of you know, I was taking care of my husband who had ALS at that time. And the church members and the ministers, Dale and Liz, were visiting us weekly. Dale even held a group at our house so that Steve could attend. Dale and Liz and church members at the Los Alamos UU Church helped us get through that difficult time. Then when I moved to St. Louis to attend graduate school, I was really active in the First UU Church in St. Louis. I'm not going to go through all of the churches that I've been a part of, but I've moved many times and I've lived in about 11 different cities. And with each move, I've always looked for a UU church. I've looked for and found a community. Here at Melrose UU Church, I've enjoyed so many church activities and found friends and additional purpose outside my work and my children. I volunteered for several committees, for the board, and have been on the women's retreat and the choir, and have made so many friends and acquaintances that I'm so privileged to have been, part of. I give to MUUC fairly generously with my pledge, and I haven't always been able to do that. Sometimes I give more with my time, and right now I've been able to give a little more with my pledge. But I will never be able to repay all that I have gained from Unitarian Universalism in spiritual growth, in the community and the friendships that I've made. But by supporting this church, I hope to pass on the good news of Unitarian Universalism to the wider community, to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. That was lovely. It was great to get to know you better. Let's take a moment now to see who's here to greet all of our friends and friends to be. We do our weekly ritual of switching to gallery view and scrolling through and waving to everybody. So let's do that now. Hi, everybody. Hi. Oh, it's a good crowd today. Hi. A lot of smiles, a lot of waves. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Looks like you all have had your coffee. All right. Excellent. Welcome. Wonderful. Thank you for making time to join us this morning. Next we'll have a lovely introit from our music director, Tara Tresner-Kirsch, and then our guest preacher, the Reverend Karen Hutt, will call us to worship. First, Tara. Take it away, Tara.
Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side. Draw the circle wide.
Karen, I don't hear you. I'm sorry. I want to hear you. Can we try?
Today, we do not hesitate to gather under the banner of Unitarian Universalism. Today, we affirm that our faith is deep and real and good and transformational. Today, we will not waver in our belief in goodness, community, hope, and humanity. Today, we are gathered to give thanks, to sing, to laugh, to hope. Today, we take this time that we set apart as we gather in the power of what is worship. A worship not rooted solely in God, deities, or dogma, but a worship of reverence for what is, what was, and what might be. Come, let us worship together with our doubts and with our fears and our contradictions. Let us tend to one another in this beloved community of the faithful. Blessed be.
And now with UUs everywhere, I will light our chalice, which is the symbol of our living faith. This morning, Jill Libby, our new treasurer, will give the chalice lighting reading. Take it away, Jill.
Good morning. Today's chalice lighting is a reading called Another World is Possible, and it's by the Reverend Ashley Horan. Another world is possible. We say it again and again, even when the proof lies somewhere but beyond the horizon, beyond our reach, beyond our imagination. This is our faith. Another world is possible. There are many routes towards liberation, toward freedom, but the abundance of options does not absolve us of the responsibility of acting. Another world is possible.
Well done, Jill. Thank you. And now Tara has our opening hymn. Please sing along as you are willing and able.
Our opening hymn this morning is There Is More Love Somewhere. It's from the oral tradition of the Georgia Sea Islands, and I invite you this morning to sing out loud. If you read music and you're used to seeing this in the pews in your hymnal, I invite you to let it go and just let yourself sing After all, there's nobody in your house to hear you, or maybe there is, but that's okay. Please join me in There Is More Love Somewhere. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy somewhere. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. Thank you.
Now let us join together in the words of our covenant, followed by the song of aspiration. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. This is our great covenant, one with another and with our God. Great. And now it's time for our story. This morning, the story is presented by the chair of our RE committee, Liz Tashoni. Go ahead, Liz.
Good morning. My name is Liz Tashoni, and I am a member of our congregation, as well as a member of the Melrose Human Rights Commission. The Human Rights Commission is a group that we have in our city that helps make sure that everybody in Melrose feels like they belong and feels like they are valued and respected and cared for. It's a group that I think is really important, and I'm proud to be a member of it. This morning I'm here to read to you a book called Martin Luther King Jr. because on Monday it is going to be Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and every year in our city we host a day called the Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service, and it is a day when we work to serve others and try to carry out Dr. King's legacy and things that he felt were really important in our world. Let's get reading. Little Martin was a spiritual boy from Atlanta who came from a long line of preachers. His dad was a preacher, his uncle was a preacher, his grandfather was a preacher. Maybe he'd become a great preacher too. It means he was a minister, and his family had a lot of ministers in it. One day, a friend invited him over to play. Martin was shocked when he was asked to leave because he was black. That day, he realized something terrible was going on. This terrible thing was called segregation. It meant that public places, like restaurants and buses, had separate spaces for black and white people. Martin and his friend were sent to different schools. Martin believed that one shouldn't remain silent or accept something if it's wrong. He promised himself that when he grew up, he'd fight injustice with the most powerful weapon of all, words. Martin studied at universities in Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts, where he read about Mahatma Gandhi, the man who had improved the lives of millions of Indians with peaceful methods of protest. When he finished his studies, Martin moved to Alabama and became the pastor of a church in Montgomery. Every Sunday from his pulpit, he encouraged his congregation to speak up about things that mattered. One evening, a woman named Rosa was arrested for refusing to give up her seat to a white man on a bus. Martin asked the people in his community not to take the bus again until the law was changed. Many citizens were inspired by Rosa's story and Martin's words. Suddenly, buses were almost empty. They stayed empty for more than a year until segregation on Montgomery's buses finally ended. Look at all these people not taking that bus, standing up for what they believe in and what they know is right. It was the first major civil rights action in America, but not the last. Martin encouraged people all over the country to stand up for their rights and join in with peaceful protests. They were often attacked, and Martin was arrested 29 times. But he and his followers never fought back with force. He knew that hate can't drive out hate. Only love can. Martin helped to organize a protest march on Washington, where he gave a life-changing speech. It began with 4 yet simple, powerful words. I have a dream. You might have heard of that. That's referring to Martin's very famous I Have a Dream speech. The next year, Martin became the youngest person to win the Nobel Peace Prize. His words of hope, peace, and justice called a nation to change its laws and make them equal for everyone. And if you listen to your heart, you can still hear little Martin asking you to keep his dream alive. A dream of a world where we are judged by our character, not the color of our skin. At the end of this book, there are some real photographs of Dr. King and some more information about his life and work. This is a book that I think our public library has available. You might be able to find it online to listen to. I really recommend it. Thinking about keeping Martin's dream alive? One of the things that you and your family can do as part of the Melrose Human Rights Commission Day of Service is work on this fun calendar that we created. This calendar is pretty special in our church because it was created by members of our church. 2 other really big helpers in our church community. Garen and Therese worked on putting this calendar together with me and a couple of the Human Rights Commissioners. You can download this on the Melrose Human Rights Commission Facebook page, or there will be a link for you to click on and you can see this. And every day it has a different activity of something that you and your family can do to carry on Dr. King's legacy of service and helping people. Some of the things are things that you might need an adult's help with. Some of the things you might be able to do on your own. We really hope you'll join us in this month of service and carrying on Dr. King's legacy. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Thank you, Liz. Every Sunday in our worship, we take time for prayer, meditation, and shared silence. So please now settle into your chair and breathe. To help us center ourselves, first we'll share in our centering song. After that, we will sit together in silence for 2 minutes. Then we'll speak our joys and sorrows, and Reverend Karen will lead us in prayer. First, the centering song, which reflects January's worship theme, Imagination. Please join in with Jenny as she sings John Lennon's Imagine. And then afterward, we'll go right into 2 minutes of silent meditation. Every Sunday, we take time to share with one another the personal milestones of our lives, our joys and our sorrows, so that we might accompany one another on the journey of life. If you have a sorrow to share today, please type it into the chat box and I will read aloud. From Florence, a candle of sorrow for friends lost to Trumpism, and a candle of support for family friends Paul and Elizabeth, who tested positive for COVID this week. I'd like to share a candle myself for my nephew, Leo, who was hit by a car on Saturday morning. He was thrown and hit his head on the pavement. There is some bleeding, but he is talking and walking, so we hope for the best. My husband James just type the same thing. Thank you, James. From Kathy Williams, I ask for your prayers for the residents of the First Church of Cambridge shelter. They have 100% COVID positive residents, as well as their director. From Beth Yergrow, I'm sad to learn of the death of a brilliant, creative, and exuberant editor of a professional journal I followed for 35 years. He struggled with mental illness. From Adrienne Wood, a candle for my coworker who just lost her mother to a courageous fight with cancer. From Patricia Ferris, a candle for a new journey this week that is going to be a difficult one. From Paul and Michelle, a candle of sorrow and support for the people of Uganda who faced a fraudulent election last week. Are there any other sorrows today? Seeing none, I say, let us pause. Let us hold all these sorrows gently with compassion in our minds and hearts. Let us send out our love and care to all who have spoken and all who are troubled today. Let them feel our care, our concern, our desire to help in whatever way possible. I now light one candle as a beacon of care for all these sorrows, those spoken and unspoken today. And now I ask for all the joys that you'd like to share. Type those into the chat box now and I will read them. From Garen, a candle of joy for living in a community that has a deep commitment to celebrating the work and the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. From Kathy, I have new hearing aids. From Harry and Jennifer, a joy. Both my dad and my mentor were able to get their first vaccine shots this week. From Corey Mann, a joy. Looking through old slides my father took beginning in 1958, I saw many wonderful journeys, pictures of my siblings and me from early ages, a delightful journey. Are there any other joys today? From Patricia, for Ellie, who got her first job as GA service. From Liz Folzer, another candle of joy for vaccines. My parents' entire retirement building has been vaccinated, as has our daughter Marie. That, I think, is our last joy. Thank you. By speaking aloud these joys or letting me do it for you, you help us connect to one another and to the joy of living. We celebrate along with you. I'll light one more candle now to shine out our thanks for all the blessings shared here this morning and all the blessings we have in all of our lives.
Friends, take your hands and mark a circle in your lap, or create a visual circle in your mind, or a circle with your breath and consume the unity, the eternity, the totality of that circle. It has no beginning and no ending. It is adaptable, flexible, pure, even culturally neutral. This circle is not unlike us. It has the capacity to be dialed, rotated, notched, spun, sliced, and subdivided. It represents the image of the cosmos, the cycles of the seasons, human life, and the orbits of planets around the sun. Look at that circle in your hands. In astronomy, the circle indicates a full moon. In meteorology, a clear sky. In alchemy, it is a symbol for chemical change. In cartography, the circle represents a village, a town, or a community. The circle is also nothing, zero. Yet the circle is potential. It is the embryo. Friends, look at your circle. Look at the circle that you made with your hands. Think about your family, your communities, your country, our world as a circle. Perhaps God is a circle whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. Perhaps the circle is the warmth of that mysterious thing called grace. Yet human circles can restrict entrance and make escaping them difficult. Circles can confine what's within and keep things out. Circles can also imprison us. But friends, right now as we pray, let your spiritual circle, let your human circle, let your Unitarian Universalist circle tug at you today. Let your circles give you both comfort and uneasiness. For in the nuance of these circles, you will know your truth. Know that this community can hold your truth, your incongruities, your frailty, your addiction, your recovery, your fear, your pain, and your joy. Know that we are the container that can hold your laments for justice, your cries for peace, and your anger for fairness. Blessed be.
Now is the time for our offertory, the moment in our service when, if we were together, we would pass the plate. If you are moved by our worship this morning, I invite you to donate using the yellow button in the top right corner of our homepage at melroseuu.org. When you do that, you might notice that down in the lower right corner, there's a little prompt that says add additional donation. This is a new feature. I've been asked to tell you about it. If you click that box, it will automatically add just enough to cover the processing fees so that your donation comes free to the church. Thank you. In honor of MLK Day, our Giving Beyond Our Walls partner for January 2021 is the Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism Organizing Collective, also known as BLUU, a national group that expands the power of Black UUs to create justice, both within and beyond our faith. For our offertory music this morning, I offer this song video shared with permission from our member, Alistair MUUC.
Dear Dr. King, we're still working to live your words down here on earth. That dream of yours, a distant shore, we struggle forward, we pull the oar between black and white, we've made some strides between rich and poor. The gap's more wide, the current's strong. We're struggling to move along, dear Dr. King. Dear Mrs. Parks, dear Malcolm too, how far have we come? We ask of you, a president, through what you've done. But voting rights now on the run. The drum still beats, the flag still waves, but where's the peace, the living wage, the city streets, the vacant lots, the empty hands? How far have we got? Dr. King, your dream still lives in the wide eyes of all our kids. We ask of them to carry on past where we've been and far beyond. The march is slow, the arc is long, but it bends towards that ancient song. Words echoing, words still the same. We're free at last, dear Dr. King.
Around the seen world, thousands of eagles descend from the cosmic womb, spreading wide at the size of the sky. Each hopes to be a solitary prince, to sharpen its best assets and the acuity to prey. Each lands in muds of pride, competing hard with lofty fellows for an enticing slice of meat. Their personal agenda keeps their wings heavy as steel, their eyes screening for monolithic peaks, but those have missed the jubilance of the simple, natural, free-flying life. Death comes and finds them bitter, among thunder and ruins, mulling over and over that in fact ignorance has hunted them. Our second reading. Lockstep atoms burned, fiendish, restless, truncated waiting, shop and drop, stop and slop, old ladies masquerade, preachers audible in a drunken charade, a toothless Tuesday, parking lot drivel, copy of a copy of a copy, total insomnia, hairless bent on Rogaine, young and stupid with cocaine, hapless pleading, loud steps and sniveling, rise above, rise out and above. The solar system shines on you, comments of Mercury, and you're betting on cosmic surgery. Rise out and above. It's so nice to be with you today, and thank you for the invitation from your fabulous minister. And it's also nice for me to be back in Massachusetts, so to speak, on today, my 63rd birthday. 46 years ago, I left Philadelphia and came to Boston to go to college. And it's where I grew up. It's where I found Unitarian Universalism and where my heart is. I mean, I like Minnesota. The lakes are beautiful, but there's nothing like Cranes Beach. There's nothing like Lime Ricky's. There's nothing like clam strips and the old legal seafood in Inman Square. So I salivate today for largely many things that I love to eat in Massachusetts, but also for the friendships and the growth that I experienced there when I arrived there 46 years ago. So it's a place that's fond in my heart. And I know Melrose well. So thank you for having me. Authority is complicated. It's challenging. Often our authority is questioned and critiqued. Some of us have seen authority denied to us, and others resist the weight that authority affords us. Authority is carefully sought after, debated, obfuscated, and measured. Authority, it's complicated. It's complicated for Unitarian Universalists. From Michael Servetus to Jack Mendelson, we have historically challenged authority with intellect, with reason, with curiosity, facts, science, and often righteous indignation. Much of how we've learned our UU history and forged our ministerial calls have been through the inspiration of individuals and events that illuminate our oppositional relationship with some form of authority. Be it the authority originally of Calvin's church in Geneva, or the authority of George Wallace's state in Alabama. Remember, we Unitarian Universalists took aim at the doctrines of hell and Trinitarianism, and we threw off the Nicene and Chalcedonian encumbrances that were weighing down Christianity. We challenged that. Our radical Reformation challenged the centrality of Christology and the manifestations of the human Christ. We debated the authority of theism, yielded to mystical transcendentalism, embraced religious and secular humanism, and we continue to this day to reconfigure and create new spiritual and religious constructs and theologies and philosophies to provide us with meaning and purpose. We Unitarians and Universalists become kind of prickly when it comes to the idea of somebody or something that has a right to exercise power over us in any form. I mean, think about your next door neighbor's license plate. I always remember that in New Hampshire: live free or die. If we were a congregation of 2-year-olds, I have a 10-month-old and a 6-year-old here in the house. If we were a congregation of toddlers, and our Sunday affirmation might be, "You are not the boss of me." I still remember my theological "you are not the boss of me" moment. It was after leaving my first UU service at Arlington Street Church in Boston. This was during college. Having been raised as a Jehovah's Witness, where beliefs were imposed on me from above in a hierarchy that always found something wrong with my behavior, I was so grateful to be able to breathe deeply here at my UU church in Arlington Street. My conviction of unconditional love for humanity was in sync with this new community of faith that I had found. filled with compassionate individuals seeking to live life responsibly, guided by principles that facilitated the potentiality of human experience. It was the narrative of freedom and resistance that attracted me to this faith some 40 some years ago. I grew up as an adult in this faith, studying our history deeply, marching for our causes, facilitating task force, teaching religious education, and becoming a minister, and preaching against the authority of limited narrow-mindedness. Yet as we mature, the passions and heroes of our young adult life start to be seen in less vibrant colors. Our chants become faint and harder to hear. Our anti-authoritarian stands are recessing in our memories. After all, postmodernism laid to rest the authority of the meta-narratives that we fought so hard against. The Academy has dismissed the authority of the Enlightenment and all of modernism. Our binary interrogation of authority has yielded to the assertion of critical theory. Our rebellion against our religious past seemed to shrink in magnitude as we tell the same stories ad nauseum. Yet, we all had that button. Well, not all of us, but I'll just talk to the boomers and above for a minute. And maybe some of you Gen Xers had the button. You know, the button or the t-shirt or the bumper sticker that said, question authority. You remember that bumper sticker? Question authority. But what bumper sticker do you put on your car after you've questioned authority for 30 years? What questions about authority should we be posing to our old Unitarian Universalist movement? Our movement of 250,000 souls in this country. How can our history help us think outside the boxes that currently define us? There's a great quote by the Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein says that, and she says, this is a lovely, listen. She says, we have thus far in our post-merger existence, you know, when we merged in the 1960s early, from Unitarians and Universalists came together. We emerged from our post-merger existence as Unitarian Universalists we treat our theological legacy with white gloves, as if it's fragile, a faded archive material to be handled lightly as possible, and then filled and filed respectively away in the attic or a basement or a filing cabinet, or looking at them as historical curiosities to be peered at curiously over the top of our spectacles, smiled fondly over, and left in the church library to be studied by the 3 UUs who asked for a key to the unlocked stacks. Treating our history. What can we learn about our tradition through the lens of critical theory? I wonder, have we really challenged authority as the farthest left edge of the Protestant Reformation that we are? Or have we been satiated by the comfort of a new authority of insularity, in jokes, and insiderness? What can be repurposed from these dusty stacks of resistance to authority to unlock and energize our movement going forward? I remember an unchurched friend of mine retelling their story to me of visiting a UU church after hearing me and others that this would be a great fit for them. It'd be a church like no other church you've been to, so go find a UU church. Experience will be transformative. Again, I was in my 20s. I believe that anything I said would be that important. A day that they would never forget. So later, after returning from a UU church that he said he had visited, he said it was hard to join a community like that had appeared to have such an authoritarian Protestant presentation. What? I was shook. I was stunned. I was very defensive. Authoritarian Protestant presentation? But upon closer inspection, I realized that we do have an environmental presentation problem. Old wood and pews facing forward, Our form of governments derives from the Puritans and has not changed significantly for 350 years. Our ways of training and calling ministers are Protestant. Our liturgical tradition is unmistakably Protestant. Our associational structure, denominational staff structure, and understanding of authority and responsibility have much more in common with Protestant traditions than any other religious tradition. Our ministerial stoles are descended from the towels that Jesus used to wash the feet of the disciple during Easter week. That's what the stoles represent. Friends, our challenge today is not the explicit authority of religious dogma, but the implicit authority of cultural hegemony that is inherent in how our churches are perceived and presented and function. Now, in simple terms, hegemony refers to the way in which the powerful shape a society's norms, values, and other institutions, and how that particular shaping becomes accepted as default, natural, perpetual, and even inevitable. That is, people tend to regard the way we currently run things as the only way to run things. One consequence of cultural hegemony is that when people think about changing things, they only think about how they can change it within the existing parameters. Since the authority of Unitarian Universalist hegemonic culture experiences itself as universal, rarely do members participating in the culture think about making changes within the confines of those established systems. This hegemonic authority shows up in the behavior of ministers and congregations, particularly when someone represents an identity or construct outside the norms of the community. People really don't know quite what to do when new people, new ideas, new cultures come into their view. Now, I can't tell you enough times, I've been to UU a long time. I cannot count the number of times that UUs have come up to me. I have a little secret that I do is I won't tell people I'm a UU minister. I'll just go to a random UU church and just see what happens. And I've got a lot of really hilarious stories, beautiful stories to tell from those experiences. But I can't tell you about how many times I've gone to these random churches all over the country. And someone comes up to me in coffee hour and tells me about a Black person that they know or a book they read about a Black person or a Black author. So for fun, I started to sort of play with the hegemony that they are confronting and trying to reach over theirs. So I say something to the effect of, I know such and such white person, or have you heard about this white lecturer? And usually a very puzzled look comes over their faces that is quite understandable since white people don't have an ethnicity, the way that heterosexuals don't have sexual orientations and men don't have a gender. Back in the 90s, I was in Chicago. And I was in seminary at Meadville Lombard School and theological school. And I didn't think I'd get called to a church because there were very few African Americans called to UU churches back then. So I started a Black church, a Black UU church, and it was focused on ministering to the LGBTQ community in Chicago on the South Side, in a largely Black neighborhood. The Black UU church focusing, and we said that we were going to be a Black church. I remember many of my colleagues in our association were polite, but very taken aback. They asked, why not just integrate in our churches to make them multicultural? I responded that this was not possible because white Anglo hegemony, cultural appropriation, reductionism, and simplistic treatments of my cultural authority muffles my identity. Needless to say, I was not very popular in UU circles for those few years. Yet Unitarian Universalists continue to ask the question, how can we become more multicultural? How can we attract more members of different cultural communities to our congregations? When will I be able to sit next to a Black person in church and turn to greet them with my welcoming, glad you're here smile? These are good questions, but let's also ask, what do members of different cultural communities lose when they join a white hegemonic culture of Unitarian Universalism? What do we simply stop why do we keep trying to make churches diverse? Something that's not going to happen because we don't live together. How many of you had Black friends over this weekend? How many of you have people that you could draw upon that would fill these pews? So, what if we simply stopped trying to make our churches diverse? What if we just gave up all those mandates and accept our churches as ethnic churches, as European American churches? Now, hear me when I say I love every Unitarian Universalist church I've been in, even the ones that were hard to love. UUs are my people. I am a UU through and through, old school humanist. My people are also ones who like to sing Harvest for the World by the Isley Brothers. My people also are those people who like to talk back to the minister. My people also put messages and bottle trees in their front yards for their ancestors. My people jump the broom when they get married and have watch night services on New Year's Eve while eating Hoppin' John greens and fish. Instead of me and other people of color losing ourselves in the translation of European ethnic churches that ask us to present our most sanitized and assimilated white selves, why not start ethnic UU churches to break the cycle of hegemonic authority that keeps us isolated, small, insular, and stuck? Why not start ethnic churches so people of color and others do not have to make such significant sacrifices that can cut them off from the major source of their pride and connection and identity? Now think about it. Some of you are probably going, well, that's not really what I want to do. But think about what others have done. The formerly Swedish Covenant Church, now simply called the Covenant Church, has doubled in size in the past 15 years because it confronted their Swedish hegemony with clarity and vision that a growing denomination had to meet people within their cultural context. So instead of asking people to abandon it, what they've done is they've started ethnic covenant churches throughout the US with much success. Covenant churches that are led by African Americans, covenant churches that are led by Latin folks. And they've put resources and money and buildings into these communities built around the same, basically, moderate Christian hegemony in terms of theology. But the ethnic identity of these churches has certain little pieces of spice that really reflect that culture. What would our movement look like? Remember John Lennon, imagine, okay? Imagine. What would it look like? What would it look like? What would our movement look like if we started more churches? I'm convinced that our message, our principles, and our purpose can be repurposed in ethnic UU churches. I've done that. Most people agree with what we say, with what we believe. And to let people know too that most Black millennials are not going to church either. So there's this huge group of people. But you have ethnic churches that have their own authority to serve as safe havens. Think about it. After Civil War ended in 1865, emancipated Africans left their former white owners' church to form Black congregations. The rich history of the American Black church is not only one of worship, but is a hub of the African American community. Ethnic UU churches would allow for specific cultural perspectives to develop and be heard. Imagine the new UU theological voices that would be nurtured from people of color who develop in a specific and robust cultural context. Ethnic UU churches would provide a connection to intellectual depth, new lexicons, new rituals, and metaphors of hope and resistance. Imagine the affirmation and power of UU principles framed in specific cultural contexts. Ethnic UU churches could help resist the marginalization and tokenism that Black people feel in a largely white congregation. Ethnic churches could give rise to a unique expression of Unitarian Universalism. However, ethnic UU churches are not excluders, but incubators that allow potentially fragile populations to establish themselves, grow, develop, and have a unique witness for our movement. Remember, friends, that historically, monocultural churches like German Lutherans, English Baptists, Scottish Presbyterians, British Anglicans, and others established themselves in colonial America, right there in New England. These monocultural churches became incubators for those who came to these shores seeking freedom, which included the freedom to add their past cultural values from Germany, from Scotland, and England to a new American future. Can you imagine GA? Can you imagine our banner parade? As I paint this picture, I envision this congregation and many of our congregations to engage with other congregations of people of color, because many of us are doing the hard work of educating ourselves and understanding and challenging white supremacy in our own midst. Imagine, like the Catholic Church, you go to an event, there are multiple cultural Catholic churches, Vietnamese Catholic Church, the Korean Church, well, most Koreans are Presbyterians, but just multiple places that you'll find all different kinds of Catholic churches. The potential emergence of people of color churches should not stop us. It should not stop us from doing the work on racism, because your work will become better with parallel congregations, more whole, more morally grounded, particularly demonstrating that you're in alignment and in relationship and not afraid to confront your own issues without us having to sit in a room with you and listen to you sort them out. Imagine, imagine, imagine. So, friends, I ask you today, let us think about being bold and create new polycentric authority with multiple centers, multiple ethnic churches, and multiple modes of worship for Unitarian Universalism. This is going to help us grow and flourish in the coming generations. Just imagine where we might go and who we might become as a movement. Blessed be, Amen, and Ashe. Now, friends, please join me in our closing hymn, Answering the Call of Love. No matter how weak or how frightened we may feel, we each have gifts that can make a difference right now in the world. So in the coming week, may you do at least one thing to support the broken, to welcome the stranger, to celebrate what is worthy, what is good, to do the work of justice and love. Be strong, be connected. Each day, act so you may be a little more whole. Blessed be.